Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the studio. Today we are going to continue the half-life size sculpture we have been working on. We're getting very close to the end now. One of the last few things remaining that we need to tackle is the hands. So that's what we're going to tackle today. We are going to be sculpting tiny half-life size hands. What you are watching right here on YouTube is an excerpt from the 40-minute long video on sculpting hands, which you can find by visiting my Patreon page. You'll find the link in the description below. So let's start with some very easy to use proportional rules regarding hands. You will have seen me do some measuring with my own hands, in order to get things heading in the right direction early on here. The hands are being sculpted late in the process, as they are at the end of the arms. So I have a lot to compare the size of the hands to, which helps a ton. In order to find the knuckles, I take the length from the top of the shoulder down to the elbow, then I go that same length from elbow down, and this should take me to the knuckles of the hand, more or less. I also take the length of the hand on my reference and compare to the length of the lower arm on my reference. In this scenario, and in most scenarios, the hands are a little shorter than the length from wrist to the inside of the elbow. A third thing you can do if you sculpt the head first, which I didn't of course, but if you did, you can compare the size of the hand to the size of the face. Usually the hand will cover the active part of the face, so almost chin to hairline. Perhaps a little less in most cases. And lastly, see where the hands end up on your reference. How far down the thigh are the hands on your model located? If the arms are hanging limp by the model's side, and she or he is standing straight, the hands tend to end mid-thigh. But of course, the pose will change this. So we have a contrapposto, and in a contrapposto, the hand will be further down on the stand leg side and further up on the balance leg side. So you have to take the pose into consideration. Here the arms are slightly bent, which of course impacts how far down the hands are. So observing the reference becomes key. Personally, I like to compare a lot to already established elements like the forearm or the face. This way I don't have to worry so much about where the hands are in space or in relationship to the body, but more about how they relate size-wise to the body. This allows me a bit more freedom in posing hands a little bit independently from the reference if I want or need to do so. We'll cover this a little bit later in the video when we talk about material consideration, designing hands, composition, etc. What matters more than anything is that the sculpture and all the parts making up the sculpture relate as far as scale goes correctly. In other words, in the same fashion that they relate on the model. Not so much if the hand is in the right place in relationship to the thigh, for example. This is of course predicated on everything we've sculpted already, especially the arms being the right length or the right height, which I believe them to be, so I'm not too worried about ending up with issues there. The armature at this scale is non-existent inside the hands. No hand armature. If the scale was greater, a hand armature would be needed or at least preferred. But here, the clay is strong enough to support its own weight. I like to have the armature of the arm, however, travel into the wrist and slightly into the palm of the hand, and that gives me all the support I really need. Inside the hand, there's room enough for the armature as well, without the clay getting too thin. The fingers are so small in this scale that having an armature inside them becomes problematic. The issue with armatures inside thin sections is that it reduces the amount of clay there, because part of the mass is made up by the armature, and less clay means less opportunity to hold moisture. So the clay will dry out faster, causing cracking, where water will enter down into the cracks, and the fingers tend to go from clay that has a little bit of a body to it, to mud, soft, mushy mud, and they fall apart. Thin sections turning to mud and falling apart is actually much more common than having sections dry out. And it's a much bigger issue, I think, as well. Much harder to deal with. No armature, however, means that the hands will be pretty fragile. In order to solve this issue, I attach the fingers to the body. This is of course dependent on the pose again, but this was something that was planned from the beginning. That's why I chose a pose where the hands can touch the body. It contains the whole composition and makes it nice and compact without any circusy elements pulling the eye out or away from the piece. So it works on a compositional level, and it works well on a material consideration level as well. Sometimes you have to let the material dictate some of these decisions. There is still a great chance of the clay becoming saturated and the hands turning to mud and falling apart, which is why I don't spray them as much as you perhaps would think. I believe I didn't spray them more than once this video. They can dry out quite suddenly, however, because they're super thin, so I have to pay close attention to how dry they get. And I will have to continue to pay close attention whenever the hands are out in the air, even if I'm sculpting something else. Once I've figured out the scale of the hands, where I want them to be as far as length goes and where the knuckles will be, where the fingers will end, there are some considerations that I need to make in order for the hands not to be bad. There are some simple tips that will help you sculpt a better hand. The overall shape of the hand is obviously very key. First thing to note is that hands are not flat. They have a cupped shape or a spoon shape to them. Establishing this basic shape to begin with will help set you on the right path. So make sure you do not make a flat paddle, as this will never be convincing. And obviously, the part of the spoon holding the soup is the inside of the hand, while the back of the hand is the underside of the spoon. I think that metaphor makes perfect sense. Take a look down at your own hands in a resting position. And notice how the thumb is attached to the side of your hand at almost a 90-degree angle compared to the back of your hand. The thumb plays a major role in the spoon shape of the hand, of course. It's one of those parts that easily fall apart, however, visually, not literally, but visually, if not carefully considered by the sculptor. A quick reminder, the thumb is on the inside of the hand and sits at an almost 90-degree angle to the rest of the hand. While the position on the hand of course can impact this, I would suggest trying to find a pose where the 90-degree angle between thumb and hand is maintained, as it tends to be more successful than a position where the entire back of the hand is pretty much flat, which the thumb can do. Even though when the thumb is brought into this position, the top of the thumb will still be at an angle to the rest of the fingers. The nail essentially pointing at a slightly different direction to the rest of the fingers. Another key thing to avoid is making the knuckles straight across the back of the hand. You know how your fingers have different lengths, right? Well, that starts at the knuckles. If the hand is hanging down, the knuckles sit at different heights. I mean, they sit at different heights anyway, but visually, imagine your hand hanging down by your side, and by your side, the knuckles will be at different heights. In many ways, they mirror the spoon shape of the hand itself, curving from the knuckle of the middle finger upwards in both directions. And this will vary from person to person within reason, and you must observe your model carefully. But on my hands, for example, the pinky knuckle sits the highest, with the ring finger and the pointing finger knuckle sitting almost directly across from each other, the middle finger knuckle being the lowest. Just like the length of fingers vary, these heights may vary as well. Some people might have their ring finger knuckle sit higher than the pointing finger knuckle. As a general concept, however, the knuckles never sit in a straight line across the back of the hand. That's all you really need to know. And then from there, you observe your model. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did and want to learn sculpture from me or just support the channel, check out my Patreon page. Next time we work on this piece, we will deal with the surface and texture, essentially finishing the surface of our sculpture, which will include some modeling as well. After that, we will deal with the cherry on top, which will be the portrait. We don't have many episodes left now, perhaps 2 or 3 more, so stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. If you enjoyed the video, click the like button and share with your friends and family. It helps me out a lot. Thank you for watching, stay creative, and I hope to see you in the next one.